Self-forgiveness is essential for growth because without it, you remain tethered to moments that no longer reflect who you are becoming. And every time you replay those memories, you reinforce limitations that were only meant to be temporary lessons, not lifelong identities. When you refuse to forgive yourself, you place invisible ceilings over your own potential, ceilings built from shame, regret, and emotional debt that keeps accumulating interest in the form of hesitation and self-doubt, making it harder to move forward with clarity and confidence. Self-forgiveness frees the mind from mental clutter, allowing you to think creatively, act decisively, and dream boldly again because you are no longer filtering every opportunity through the lens of your past failures, but through the lens of who you are capable of becoming. It shifts your focus from punishment to progress, from remorse to responsibility, from fear to intention. And in that shift, you begin accessing the version of yourself that actually has the power to change your life. Growth cannot happen in a soil filled with resentment toward yourself because resentment poisons your self-belief. And without self-belief, no strategy, no habit, no external help can take root the way it should, which is why releasing yourself is the first step toward elevating yourself. When you let go of guilt, you create room for new behaviors, new thoughts, and new decisions to emerge, ones that allow you to operate from wisdom instead of wounds. Forgiving yourself aligns you with the truth that you are not the same person who made those mistakes, and you're not supposed to be, because life is designed to teach, stretch, refine, and mature you through the exact moments you wish you could erase. Those moments were catalysts, not curses. They pushed you into self-awareness, forced you into growth, and shaped your understanding of responsibility in ways comfort never could. When you practice self-forgiveness, you reclaim your energy from the past and redirect it toward building your future. And that energy shift alone elevates your capacity to show up fully in relationships, goals, and opportunities that once felt overwhelming or out of reach. It restores your emotional bandwidth, giving you the strength to take risks again, try again, and believe again without the weight of old narratives pulling you backward. Self-forgiveness also builds internal trust because each time you release yourself from guilt, you reinforce the belief that you can handle your humanity without destroying your hope, and that belief becomes the foundation for courage, discipline, and resilience. When you trust yourself again, you stop operating from fear of repeating the past and start operating from a commitment to creating something better. Without forgiveness, your identity becomes entangled with your mistakes, but with forgiveness, your identity becomes anchored in your growth, and that shift affects everything: how you think, how you choose, how you act, and how you interpret every challenge you face. Instead of seeing obstacles as confirmations of your flaws, you begin seeing them as opportunities to prove to yourself that you have evolved. Self-forgiveness liberates you from the internal conflict that keeps you fighting battles within yourself that you've already outgrown. And when that conflict dissolves, you finally gain access to inner peace, which becomes the fuel for clearer decisions and stronger actions. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the absence of self-punishment. And from that peace comes the freedom to move forward unapologetically. Growth demands space, and self-forgiveness creates that space by releasing emotional weight you were never meant to carry indefinitely, weight that distracts you from purpose and diminishes your ability to operate at the level required for the life you're trying to build. The lighter you become internally, the more momentum you gain externally, because nothing slows progress like being anchored to a past that no longer aligns with who you are. When you forgive yourself, you reclaim your identity, your confidence, your direction, and your capacity to become someone who is not shaped by mistakes, but strengthened by them. Someone who no longer views their past as a prison, but as proof that transformation is always your past is a teacher, not a jailer. Because every experience you've lived through was designed to reveal something about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you must refine as you move forward, not to trap you in cycles of shame or regret. When you look back through the lens of punishment, you miss the wisdom hidden within the moment. But when you look back through the lens of instruction, you begin to understand that every mistake, every setback, and every misstep carried a message that was meant to elevate you. Your past teaches through clarity, showing you what doesn't work so you can redirect your life toward what does, highlighting patterns that need breaking and tendencies that need transforming. It exposes the assumptions that led you astray, the relationships that drained you, the decisions that cost you, and the beliefs that limited you, not so you can stay stuck in them, but so you can evolve beyond them with intention and awareness. When you see your past as a teacher, you stop fighting it and start learning from it, And in that shift, you reclaim power that was lost when you allowed regret to speak louder than reflection.
You begin to realize that nothing in your history was wasted. Every chapter contributed to your strength, your discernment,
And your emotional depth, even the ones you wish you could rewrite. Your past becomes a guidepost pointing toward the areas where you need healing, growth, and realignment, and the lessons it carries become stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. Instead of holding you back, those lessons begin shaping the confidence you have today because you now understand what you can withstand and what you can rise above. When you treat your past like a teacher, you change your relationship with failure, understanding that failure was not a final verdict, but a refining tool that revealed your resilience and exposed your potential. You recognize that the discomfort of those moments was the very discomfort required to push you into becoming someone with deeper perspective, stronger character, and greater emotional intelligence. Your past also teaches you the value of responsibility, showing you where you contributed to your own obstacles and what choices need to change if you want different outcomes in the future. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about empowering yourself with the truth that you have influence over your own direction. And your next chapter is shaped by the lessons you apply, not the mistakes you made. Seeing your past as a teacher helps you break the illusion that you are defined by the worst things you've done, or endured, reminding you that those moments were snapshots, not your entire identity, and that growth is proof that you are more than the sum of your decisions. This shift allows you to move with humility instead of shame, with awareness instead of fear, and with confidence instead of insecurity. Your past teaches you discernment, helping you recognize red flags sooner, set boundaries faster, and choose more wisely because the lessons you've internalized become instincts that guide your future choices. These instincts protect you, elevate you, and prepare you for opportunities that require a more mature, grounded, and self-aware version of you. When you embrace your past as an instructor, you unlock the ability to transform pain into purpose and setbacks into strategies, allowing you to walk forward not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the wisdom that was shaped in the process. You no longer carry your history as a burden, you carry it as a toolbox filled with understanding, clarity, and insight that strengthens every step you take. And as you continue learning from it, your past becomes one of your greatest assets, equipping you with the perspective, resilience, and courage necessary to rise into a future that is not hindered by where you've been, but informed, empowered, and elevated by everything it taught. You must release the negative story you tell yourself because the narratives you repeat internally become the boundaries you live within, shaping what you believe you deserve, what you pursue, and what you allow yourself to experience. When you cling to a story rooted in failure, regret, or inadequacy, you unconsciously limit your capacity to grow because you begin making decisions that match the story instead of the potential that lies within you. Every time you replay that negative script, you reinforce an identity that is too small for the futu. You are meant to create. The story you tell yourself becomes the internal environment where your thoughts, emotions, and expectations are formed. And if that environment is filled with blame, shame, or fear, then everything you attempt will be filtered through a sense of unworthiness. Releasing that story allows you to breathe again, to think differently, and to see that the version of you who made past choices does not have to dictate the version of you who is rising now. Letting go of the old story is an act of liberation, freeing you from cycles that have kept you repeating patterns you no longer want to live. Negative stories often come from moments of weakness, pain, or confusion, but over time they become deeply ingrained beliefs that feel like truth, even when they are nothing more than emotional residue. You must recognize that these stories were created during a time when you lacked the tools, wisdom, or clarity you have today. And holding on to them only keeps you anchored to a mindset you have already outgrown. Releasing them creates space for a narrative built on strength, resilience, and possibility. When you let go of the negative story, you reclaim your ability to define yourself instead of being defined by your lowest moments. You stop seeing yourself through the distorted lens of past disappointment and begin seeing yourself through the lens of who you are capable of becoming. This shift allows you to walk with confidence instead of hesitation, courage instead of guilt, and hope instead of fear. Without releasing the story, you keep repeating it, not because it's true, but because it's familiar. Releasing the negative story is not about ignoring what happened. It's about refusing to let it rule your identity. It's about acknowledging the moment, learning the lesson, and then choosing not to carry the emotional weight forward. When you do this, you stop dragging yesterday into today, and your energy becomes available for growth, clarity, and meaningful transformation. The past becomes information, not condemnation. Holding a negative story creates emotional noise. Constant background thoughts that drain your ability to believe in yourself, trust your decisions, and pursue your goals wholeheartedly. Once you release that story, the noise quiets, and you can finally hear your true voice again, the voice that knows you are capable, worthy, and equipped for more. With that clarity, you begin to act in alignment with your true potential instead of your old wounds. Your negative story often acts like a mirror that reflects only your flaws, hiding your progress, resilience, and strength. Letting go of that story allows you to step back and see the fuller picture, one where you've grown through challenges, learned through pain, and become stronger through adversity. You begin to see evidence of your evolution everywhere, evidence that was always there but overshadowed by a story that focused only on your shortcomings. Releasing the story empowers you to rewrite your inner dialogue, replacing self-criticism with self-respect and replacing doubt with determination. As you shift your internal language, you shift your entire life direction because the words you speak to yourself directly shape your habits, relationships, and ambitions. This transformation begins quietly, internally, but it eventually manifests externally in the form of greater confidence, clearer decisions, and bolder actions. When you let go of the story, you stop reliving the moment you're trying to escape and start stepping into moments that reflect your growth. You begin showing up as the healed, aware, and intentional version of yourself who makes choices based on vision, not fear. This internal freedom becomes the foundation for a new chapter built, not on reaction to the past, but on creation of the future. And as you continue releasing the story day by day, you create emotional, mental, and spiritual space for new beliefs to take root. Beliefs that elevate you, empower you, and expand what you see as possible for your life, allowing you to step into a reality shaped not by who you were, but by who you are becoming. Healing is a strategic decision, not an emotional accident, because waiting for time alone to fix you keeps you stuck in cycles that require intentional choices, not passive hoping. Time can pass, but nothing changes until you make the internal shift that says, I will not live from this wound anymore. Healing begins the moment you decide to confront what you've avoided, challenge what you've believed, and change what you've been tolerating. It is a choice rooted in clarity, not convenience. And that choice becomes the turning point that separates those who repeat their pain from those who rise above it. Healing requires deliberate action because emotional wounds do not close by themselves. They stay open until you consciously address the thoughts, habits, and patterns that keep them alive. When you see healing as strategy, you stop waiting for your feelings to cooperate and start building habits that help your heart catch up. You begin creating boundaries where you once absorbed everything, speaking truth where you once stayed silent, and honoring your needs where you once neglected them. Those actions are not emotional impulses. They are intentional steps toward freedom. Strategy allows you to approach healing with direction, recognizing that becoming whole is not a random moment, but a structured process that requires awareness, responsibility, and consistency. It pushes you to examine the root instead of treating the symptoms, to identify the belief beneath the behavior, and to dismantle the R&L narratives that have shaped your responses for far too long. This kind of healing is active, engaged, and purposeful, turning your pain into a roadmap instead of a prison. Choosing to heal strategically means acknowledging that emotions may resist the process, but discipline will carry you through it. There will be days when the past feels loud and the old patterns feel familiar, but strategy teaches you to rely on decisions, not moods. It teaches you to keep doing the work even when your feelings fluctuate, understanding that consistency builds transformation in ways emotion alone never can. Healing as a strategic decision empowers you to redefine your identity because you begin detaching from the versions of yourself built in survival mode. You start recognizing where fear shaped your choices, where hurt shaped your reactions, and where insecurity shaped your relationships. And with that awareness, you intentionally build a new identity grounded in truth, growth, and self-respect, rather than in wounds you didn't choose but can still rise from. This strategic approach shifts your mindset from being a victim of your experiences to being a steward of your transformation. Instead of asking why something happened, you ask what it is trying to teach you. Instead of dwelling on what you lost, you focus on what you can rebuild. Instead of replaying the pain, you focus on creating patterns that move you towards strength, clarity, and emotional stability. When healing becomes intentional, you begin treating yourself with the same patience, compassion, and commitment you've extended to everyone else. You stop rushing your progress, stop apologizing for your needs, and stop minimizing your struggle. You start recognizing that healing is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And through it, you reclaim the parts of you that trauma, disappointment, or neglect tried to silence. Strategic healing also forces you to confront the environments, relationships, and habits that keep reopening old wounds. It gives you the courage to step away from what hurts you, the wisdom to rebuild what strengthens you, and the clarity to protect what matters. You begin structuring your life around peace, purpose, and emotional maturity rather than chaos, guilt, or fear. This is where true transformation starts to take shape, not through chance, but through intention. Healing in this way becomes a discipline, a daily recommitment to becoming the healthiest version of yourself, even when the process is uncomfortable. It teaches you to let go of what no longer serves you, to embrace what aligns with your growth, and to create internal stability that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Over time, the effort compounds and the decisions you make repeatedly begin rewriting your emotional foundation. And as you continue choosing healing with purpose, you begin realizing that freedom is not an event, but a progression, shaped by every intentional step, every courageous choice, and every moment you refuse to return to what once broke you, allowing you to rise with a strength that was built by strategy, not accident. Your scars are evidence of survival and transformation because each one carries a story of something you endured, something you fought through, and something you learned from. Even if the lesson wasn't immediately clear, they are reminders that you faced moments that could have broken you, moments that could have ended your progress, moments that could have defined you in ways that diminished your worth, yet you continued forward with a strength you didn't fully recognize at the time. These scars are not signs of weakness. They are signatures of resilience etched into your history. Your scars reveal the places where life stretched you beyond what you thought you could handle, shaping your character in ways comfort never could. They show that despite the pain, confusion, or heartbreak you encountered, you refused to stop evolving. They reflect the moments when you discovered capacities you didn't know you had and found courage you didn't know you possessed. Scars tell the truth about who you've become, not because the journey was easy, but because you were willing to walk through it. When you look at your scars through the lens of transformation, you begin to understand that every wound carried a purpose, even when it didn't feel like it. The things that once hurt you the most are now the things that empower you to stand stronger, think clearer, and love wiser. Scars shift from being reminders of what happened to becoming reminders of what you overcame. And in that shift, you reclaim authority over the narrative that once held you captive. Your scars hold emotional intelligence, teaching you how to navigate future challenges with more wisdom than before. They sharpen your discernment, deepen your empathy, and strengthen your sense of identity. You no longer fear the storms because you carry proof on your skin and in your soul that you have weathered storms before. With every scar, you gain a piece of yourself back that pain once tried to steal, and that recovery becomes part of your power. These scars also mark the boundaries between your old self and your evolved self, showing the moments where you outgrew patterns, people, and perspectives that once kept you limited. They become proof that you didn't stay where you were hurt, that you didn't settle for emotional paralysis, and that you didn't allow the wound to become your identity. They represent the turning points where healing began and transformation took root. Your scars are not something to hide because they are the very things that make you, our journey, authentic. They carry the stories no one else sees, the late nights, the internal battles, the quiet decisions, the breakthroughs that came after breakdowns. They remind you that healing wasn't instantaneous, but happened step by step, choice by choice, day by day, even when you didn't feel strong enough to continue. Scars reveal that you didn't just survive, you grew. Survival alone keeps you breathing, but transformation shapes who you become. Those marks show that you allowed yourself to evolve, to break old cycles, to confront painful truths, and to rebuild from the inside out. They show that you embraced the uncomfortable work required to rise beyond your circumstances rather than remaining trapped within them. When you honor your scars, you honor your journey. You acknowledge the inner battles that no one applauded you for, the chapters that taught you the value of emotional endurance, and the moments that refine your character. Your scars remind you that growth often comes through resistance, and that the discomfort you face became the foundation for the strength you now carry. Your scars also serve as evidence that healing is possible, empowering you to trust the process even when the process feels slow. They remind you that pain does not last forever, that wounds can close, and that even the most broken parts of your life can produce wisdom, strength, and clarity. They inspire you to believe in your own ability to overcome whatever comes next, because you've already overcome so much. As you continue moving forward, your scars become sources of gratitude rather than sources of shame, because you recognize that each one symbolizes a victory. Victories won in silence, victories fought with endurance, victories that shape the depth, resilience, and power of who you are. Becoming your destiny is unlocked through self-grace and personal responsibility. Bika. Use the life you are meant to live requires both compassion for who you have been and accountability for who you are becoming. Self-grace allows you to release the weight of mistakes, failures, and missed opportunities, clearing the emotional clutter that keeps you stuck, while personal responsibility empowers you to take ownership of the direction you choose from this moment forward. Without grace, you stay bound to guilt. Without responsibility, you stay bound to stagnation. Together, they form the foundation that allows you to rise into the version of yourself capable of fulfilling your purpose. When you extend grace to yourself, you interrupt the cycle of self-criticism that destroys confidence and drains your motivation. You begin to understand that missteps do not disqualify you, they develop you. Grace gives you the emotional freedom to evolve because it shifts your mindset from punishment to progress. It helps you see your past not as a barrier, but as a stepping stone toward the character, resilience, and clarity required for destiny-level living. Personal responsibility, on the other hand, gives you the power to shape your future with intention. It moves you from blaming circumstances to building solutions, from waiting for change to creating it. Responsibility is the moment you stop expecting life to hand you transformation and start choosing the habits, decisions, and mindset that produce it. It is the commitment to no longer outsource your power or excuse your potential. When you combine self-grace with responsibility, you create a balanced internal environment where growth can thrive. Grace gives you the space to heal. Responsibility gives you the structure to advance. Grace acknowledges your humanity. Responsibility activates your capability. You begin to recognize that you are both a work in progress and a powerful creator, and this dual awareness, becomes the fuel for sustainable transformation. Your destiny requires a version of you who has released the shame of the past so completely that you can walk into the future without internal hesitation. This is where self-grace becomes essential because shame paralyzes progress. It keeps you playing small, doubting yourself, and delaying your next step. Grace breaks that paralysis by reminding you that you are worthy of forward movement, worthy of opportunity, and worthy of becoming more than your history. At the same time, your destiny also requires a version of you who refuses to be passive about your life. Responsibility forces you to confront where you've settled, where you've avoided growth, and where you've allowed excuses to become normal. It challenges you to upgrade your habits, elevate your standards, and discipline your decisions so that your actions match the magnitude of the future you desire. Without responsibility, grace becomes permission to remain the same. Without grace, responsibility becomes pressure that leads to burnout. Self-grace strengthens your inner world by calming the emotional battles that once made you feel unworthy of breakthrough. Responsibility strengthens your outer world by aligning your behavior with your purpose. As the inner world and outer world come into harmony, you begin to move differently, more intentionally, more boldly, more strategically, because you're no longer sabotaged by guilt or fragmented by inconsistency. When you embrace both, you stop running from your potential and start rising into it. You begin making choices that reflect your future instead of your fears. You start trusting yourself again, believing in your ability again, and acting in alignment with the greatness planted within you. Grace heals the foundation. Responsibility builds the structure. Together, they create the pathway toward the life you're meant to have. Your destiny opens when you stop disqualifying yourself internally and start empowering YLF practically. Grace helps you silence the voice that says you're not enough. Responsibility helps you build the version of you that absolutely is. Grace reminds you that your story isn't over. Responsibility reminds you that you're the one writing the next chapter. This combination makes you unstoppable because it transforms your mindset, your habits, your decisions, and your direction. And as you continue walking in both, you realize that